Commissioner Larry Suffington, and I want to welcome you tonight to our task force on redistricting. Every 10 years, we put on the board redistricting studies. And your input tonight will help us do that. I want to mention that we have a sign interpreter, Walter Matthews, who you can see here. If you would have the need for Walter, I will ask you to pin him. I'm not sure exactly what that is. And he will be able to see you and he will be able to communicate directly with you. The purpose of the meeting is to get input from the various communities of influence that exist within the 13th district. Municipal leadership, African American communities, Asian American communities, Hispanic community, Muslim community, Jewish community, disabled community, mental health community, renters, homeowners, nursing home, university communities, educational communities, public health communities, landlords, business community, healthcare community, forest preserve and environmental community, and the other ethnic communities that make up this wonderful district. I'd like to now introduce the members of the task force and ask each of them to just give a short summary of their background. Our Commissioner Josina Morita from the Water Reclamation District is the chair of this, and Commissioner Morita.
Thank you, Commissioner Suffredin. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I'm honored to chair this redistricting task force for the 13th County District. My name is Josina Morita. I'm a commissioner at the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, but in my past life as an urban planner, I was also a voting rights redistricting mapper and helped work on the voting rights districts and the General Assembly map in 2011. I also live right here in Skokie, and I'm very active here in Niles Township, where we have a very vibrant Asian American community, and I'm proud to chair the statewide Asian American caucus here in Illinois.
Thank you. And representing the 50th Ward is Rabbi Shlomo Soroka. Rabbi?
Thank you, Commissioner. It's an honor to participate. My name is Shlomo Soroka. I serve as the Director of Government Affairs for Agudath Israel of Illinois, which is a grassroots umbrella organization that seeks to address the concerns and be the voice of the Orthodox Jewish community in the halls of government and providing social services as well. And in this capacity, I'm trying to play a helpful role to all the residents of the 50th Ward in this process, which I've come to learn a lot about in my work on behalf of the Orthodox Jewish community with the Senate and the House on the state level, the House and Senate redistricting committees. So I was invited by the Commissioner to join in this task force as well.
Thank you. Representing the city of Evanston is Mr. Kevin Brown. Kevin?
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Kevin Brown. It's really an honor to serve on the redistricting committee. I'm currently employed by the Safer Foundation, which is an organization in Chicago that works with individuals with arrest and conviction records, helping them to be employed and productive citizens in the community. I've been very involved here in Evanston politically, serving on the executive board of the NAACP, as well as on the executive board of Opal Evanston. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Representing New Trier Township is Judy Mandel. Judy?
Yes. Hi, my name is Judy Mandel. I moved back to Wilmette in 1994. I got active in the League of Women Voters and with the Village of Wilmette was on the Community Fair Committee and also their 125th Anniversary Committee. And for the past almost 8 years, I've been president of the New Trier Democrats, an organization trying to promote Democratic candidates and issues of interest to the community.
Thank you, Judy. And finally, representing the 49th Ward of the City of Chicago, Reverend Dr. Marilyn Pagan Banks. Marilyn?
Good evening, buenas noches, and thank you, Commissioner Suffredin. I'm Marilyn Pagan Banks with A Just Harvest here in the 49th Ward, where we are working to address issues of hunger and poverty. Our ward is very diverse, both racially and economically. And we are working to make sure that we continue to keep it that way. And so we have conversations with both renters and homeowners about how we can work together to make sure that we continue to have a very vibrant and diverse community. And we do that also by making sure we're taking care of one another. So A Just Harvest is very engaged with the mutual aid that's happening in Rogers Park, both pre-COVID and even now during this pandemic. And so we're very committed to making sure that the nuances of taking care of one another, looking out for one another, and being neighbors aren't lost in any kind of changes that might happen in our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. Also on with us tonight is Peter Kritikos. Peter is the consultant who has been hired by the Cook County Board to assist us in the remap process. He did this 10 years ago. He has experience in doing the General Assembly remaps and the county remaps. Peter, would you like to just say a couple words and explain what you're doing? We're going to explain that where the public hearings will be from the county later in this presentation.
Sure. So thanks, Commissioner. As you've said, I've been doing this for a while. In fact, the county went to single-member districts in the 1990s, and I drew that first map and have drawn everyone since. What's different, and then prior to that, I started out working for Senate President Phil Rock, drew the legislative and congressional maps in the 80s and the Democratic map in the 90s for the legislature, which didn't get approved. My real work is I run a public policy institute on workforce issues. It's called the Institute for Work in the Economy. So that's my real job. But every 10 years, I'm invited back to work on this. Just a couple of pointers or just observations, and we can get into the details if anybody has any questions. The Cook County is very different than all the other jurisdictions. We run a very open process. We engage community in any number of different levels. We have an open map room where there's no back room. In fact, it's a single room. And the public's invited to come in, work on their ideas. Commissioners come in to do the same. We'll sit down with every and any group to talk through their issues. And we support that with staff. So anybody who does come in, they're just not left alone and said, here, you figure it out. We work with you on that. What that has gotten us in the past is this last round we had 17 votes for the map out of 17. So far we've satisfied the various groups such that the county has never been challenged in court on any of the maps that we've worked on, and have been the only ones. I'd like to continue that, and I firmly believe it has to do with the fact that we make this such an open consultative process. We're also nonpartisan, so we work for both sides of the aisle, which again affords us an opportunity to be able to focus on matters of representation more than matters of politics. So we're able to focus exclusively on a discussion around a fair representation of African Americans, Latinx, because with the Voting Rights Act decisions here, those are two groups that are quote protected minorities under the Voting Rights Act as applied here in Illinois. But then we're planning an aggressive outreach program, outreach to various other communities. I've already been in touch with a major disability focused organization. We have a small budget for our own research on issues. So for instance, fair representation of women in terms of configuration of districts. And all that's going to play into our thinking. Larry, you want me to talk about our two-step process? You want me to finish up with that, or you want?
Sure, please, Peter. Yes.
Yeah. So this year it's unique because I've never done a map where we don't have the data. We don't have census data. The data that we rely on ultimately will be the files called the PL 94-171 data that's reported by the Census Bureau, and those data include data on voting age population, as well as total population, and by race and ethnicity in terms of Latinx or not. What we're going to do instead, to accommodate this collaborative process that we propose to have, is that we'll use an alternative set of data. We've looked at the American Community Survey. We're not satisfied that that provides an accurate picture, particularly at the block and block group level. The census itself will indicate that that is the case. They just put out a publication yesterday to that point. There's another data set from a private company called Esri, ESRI. They also are the vendors that do ArcGIS and other mapping software. So we've looked at those two data sets. One shows ACS, for instance. I'm not satisfied that it shows fairly changes in population in predominantly African American Latinx areas, because of they show losses that just don't make sense in terms of common knowledge. You know, when we talk to commissioners about certain areas in their districts that are heavily Latinx or African American, what purports to be big losses just don't seem to be the case. Esri seems to do a better job there. And what we're going to do instead is we're going to combine the two as a hybrid, use that in guiding our thinking and in supporting conversations we have with groups around the county. By the end of July, we will produce a staff framework map, which has no legal standing. It is purely a representation of what we've heard and the conversations that we've had in consultation also with the county board. We think that that would be a fair guide, so that when we hope that will be a fair guide in the sense of the hope part is that we hope that what we use as a data set is close to what we'll get from the census. We'll use that as a way of sort of being the guide so that when we do get the census data on August 16th, we will be able to drop it in, see how close we came, and if we have to make adjustments, we'll do that. The challenge that we have is that we only have until August 30th as a practical matter to get it done, because petitions go out on August 31st. And so in order for people to circulate petitions, they need to know who's in their district. I mean, what block is in their district and so forth. Otherwise, those signatures, if they're wrong, are invalid. And so we believe that in order given that there is no change in statute, statute changes, that's a different story, but given a current statute, we only have until August 30th for the county board to adopt the final map. So our challenge is that between the 16th of August and the 30th of August, we need to come up with a final configuration. Hence the reason why we want to go through the framing process, so that we have a clear understanding of all the interests out there, so that when we go through that last 14-day sprint, where we know who to consult, we know how to talk to people, we know how to listen to people, and we can come up with the final configuration that's based on the final census data. I will say honestly, nobody's happy with 14 days. It is what it is. That's when we get the census data, and that's when people start running for office. It's on the 31st. So that's our challenge, and we're hoping that we'll be able to achieve our goal of our past practices of full consultation, and then having something that can be adopted by the county board. So that's
Thank
it
you,
in a
Peter.
nutshell. Yeah.
Thank you. One of the things I want to mention is the computer room will open as soon as we get the computers. Because of the shortage of computer chips, we're back ordered on our computers, but we will let everybody know when those computers are available. And second, we are following what's going on in Springfield. There is a distinct possibility they would move the primary, which would then give us a little more time to be able to analyze the census data, but it has not happened yet. And as Peter said, we're going to follow the law. The procedures tonight are for us to collect data. We are recording this. We will put the recording on my website, suffraden.org. We recorded the hearing we had last night. What we are trying to do is have this task force put together some talking points that we will be presenting to Peter and the rest of the county board as we figure out how to draw the maps and where to go. So I'm going to start now by turning this over to the chairman of the task force, Josina Marita, and she will kind of do a little overview, and then we'll start taking testimony. Thank you again for being here. Josina?
Thank you, Larry, Commissioner Suffredin, and thanks again, everybody, for joining us. To provide some context before we get started, I'm just going to do a brief what is Redistricting 101 and provide a framework of the county board districts and the 13th district itself, and what communities of interest in particular are. So what is redistricting? Fundamentally about representation. Is the redrawing of political districts that happens in the year following the decennial census, so the years ending in 1, like 2021. It determines who lives in a particular district, including incumbents, potential candidates, institutions, voters, and residents. Which is what we'll largely be discussing tonight. Who do we believe is the 13th district, which largely determines who can be elected in a particular district, which determines what policy issues are possible, which affects all of us. I always say this is one of the most important processes that people really don't understand and have a lot of misinformation about. People think oftentimes that redistricting is this super technical process where there's really only one way to draw a map. But instead of having like infinite numbers of rules, I say there's actually very few rules and infinite possibilities in how you can draw a map. So there are 3 fundamental rules to redistricting: equal population, compact and contiguous, and the Federal Voting Rights Act. So equal population is quite simple. It's fundamental to one person, one vote. It's that each district should have about the same number of people to ensure fair representation. Right. So if you had a district that had 50 residents, you had a district with 25 residents, the residents in which district have more power. Oftentimes people would say the district with 50 residents, because oftentimes we think more people, more power, but you have to remember that each district still only has 1 representative. So if you think of it like a pizza, would you rather share 1 pizza with 50 people or 1 pizza with 25 people? So it's actually the district with residents with only 25 residents that have twice as much say as those in the district with 50. So just a little bit of the logic to redistricting. Compact and contiguous. Oftentimes we think compact means like a square or a circle, but I think we also know that that's not how our communities are shaped. And so compact is kind of vaguely interpreted in redistricting, but the hard and fast rule is that it has to be contiguous, meaning you can't have a portion of the district here, a portion here, and it's not connected by land. It can be just as small as a point, right? You see the point contiguity in the image on the right, but it does have to be contiguous. The third, which really provides more guide rails than the first 2 of how districts can be drawn, is the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which was part of the civil rights movement that recognized racial discrimination. The section 2 is the part that applies to Illinois, and the fundamentals to that is that if you can draw an effective majority minority district, you have to. What an effective majority minority district means, it's not just 50% plus 1 minority, but looking at voting patterns and other dynamics. Can the minority group in that district actually vote in and elect the candidate of their own choice? So those are some of the fundamental legal restrictions on redistricting. But one of the concepts that I think is most relevant for us tonight in the 13th district is the concept of communities of interest, which is not a legal requirement, but it is something that is supposed to be respected in the redistricting process. And so communities of interest are communities that maybe don't necessarily make up an effective majority in the group in a district, but a smaller community defined by a specific geography that have shared characteristics. Those can be race, ethnicity, religion, institutions, transportation. We talked about renters last night. Any kind of shared characteristics within a particular community that is distinct from those around us. Right, so it can't just be like, oh, this is our shared characteristics, but it's actually the same as the people around us. And when we define the geographic boundaries of a community interest, they do need to be distinct. And so that's a lot of what we hope to hear from you all tonight. Before we get started, here's a map of Cook County and the county board districts. Our district, the 13th district, is in the upper right-hand corner. There have been tremendous population changes over the last 10 years. So you can see here are all 17 districts. Some districts have lost as much as 12% of the required population. That's District 7, which is on the southwest side, a majority Latino district. That's lost 12%. Some have gained as much as 11%. That's Commissioner Gaynor's district number 10, which is on the north east side of the city, the lakefront area. And you see in the gray line is Commissioner Suffredin, the 13th district, our district, which has had population gains of about 5%, which is in the allowable deviation when we draw districts. So when we talk about the district, right, if we're talking about, oh, we want to add this portion or this community of interest to the district, that also means that we're likely going to have to lose another part of the district. So this is not a conversation purely about addition or purely about subtraction, but about balancing and making sure it's the proper configuration. And you can see that we're unique. We are an incredibly diverse district. We are a district that is 58% white, 12% Black, 11% Hispanic, and 16% Asian. So this is actually the highest percentage Asian district here in Cook County. So this is the geographic boundaries of the 13th district. It includes all of New Trier Township, all of Niles Township, Evanston, and portions of the 49th and 50th wards, generally north of Devon, but you can see that's not the case across the entire border. So this is the 13th district. These are the population changes. So the darker green areas is where we've had population gains. These are at the precinct level, and the lighter areas are where we have had population loss. So you can see it's been there's been a lot of change even within the district over the last decade. Commissioner Suffredin has established this 13th District Redistricting Task Force. This is the second of 2 public hearings. We had some quite moving testimony last night from a gentleman, Mr. Johnson, in the 49th Ward, who talked specifically about the renter community. After tonight's hearing, where we have a number of testifiers, we will be compiling the community input from this process. The county board will be having official redistricting hearings Monday, June 17th, 14th, and 21st at 10 a.m. This task force. Sure.
Josina, we today changed the June 21st redistricting hearing to 6 p.m.
Oh, great. That's
So
great. That will be one in the evening. It'll make it more accessible. Fantastic. We'll update that and we'll send that additional information to everybody who's been participating tonight. And this task force will also then be taking all of the community input from these hearings and testifying at the county board hearings on behalf of the 13th district. Others are welcome to do the same. And that with that input, Mr. Creticos, who you heard earlier today, along with the county board, will be drawing and passing a new map. Tonight, we're excited to have a number of testifiers providing community input. We would love to hear your name, organization, and where
I'm not available to receive your call at this time. Please be kind enough to leave your name, your number, and a brief message. I promise I'll get back with you as soon as I can. May God bless you and have a wonderful day.
At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Please mute your phones, please.
Sorry. So we'd love to hear your name, organization, where you live, what you consider to be the shared characteristics of your community, why you're a community of interest, what you consider to be the north, south, east, west boundaries, if you believe that there are boundaries to the community of interest that you're talking about, any institutions or places within those boundaries. What are the distinct characteristics that make your community of interest different from the surrounding area? And what are the specific things that you believe Cook County government can do to support your community of interest. Every testifier has 3 minutes this evening, and we appreciate everybody taking some time tonight with us. So with that, we will start with our first testifier, New Trier Township Supervisor Gail Schnitzer-Eisenberg.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioner Suffredin and members of the Redistricting Task Force. My name is Gail Schnitzer-Eisenberg. I am I'm the New Trier Township Supervisor, and I'm here in my individual capacity to speak in support of keeping New Trier Township in a single Cook County Commissioner District. And I'm testifying from Wilmette. New Trier Township is a limited scope government dedicated to providing leadership, advocacy, and resources to benefit the physical, mental, and social well-being of township residents. The township's authority covers Wilmette, Winnetka, Kenilworth, Glencoe, and portions of Northfield and Glenview. In order to meet the demands and rapidly changing times, the township has established numerous services and programs to help people to fully realize their potential and to strengthen our communities. But the pandemic has underscored the importance of working across governmental entities to address resident needs. Our Township Social Services Administrator, Jean Winstead Rosser, frequently refers residents to constituent services representatives in various governmental offices to best help them navigate the complex system of social services available to them. With the county taking an active role in the relief efforts, having a single point of contact is invaluable, especially when helping residents in some of their most stressful and dire times. With my term as supervisor just beginning this past Monday, I certainly hope to work side by side with Commissioner Suffredin and his successor to increase collaboration and cooperation between the county and the township, particularly on issues related to court diversion, healthcare, and environmentalism. On that note, I am proud of our county's fabulous forest preserve system. Having a single commissioner represent the North Branch of the Chicago River ensures that the voices of those standing for that treasure are not diluted. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak in favor of keeping New Trier Township in a single commissioner district. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor, and welcome. Congratulations on being sworn in last week. Any questions for Ms. Eisenberg? All right, with that, we will move next. We have Mindy Zisman. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Hi, I'm Mindy Zisman. Thank you, Commissioner Suffredin and all the members of the Redistricting Task Force. Thanks for having me. My name is Mindy Zisman. As you said, I am a resident of West Rogers Park in Chicago's 50th Ward, and I'm a small business owner here for the last 16 years. I'm also a high school teacher locally in Peterson Park at one of our Orthodox girls' high schools. I'm the mom of 5 children who go to various Orthodox day schools here in the community as well. And I am here, thank you to Shlomo Soroka, who asked me to come. So while we're here talking about, somewhat of a migration out of Illinois, Chicago's Orthodox community has actually only grown exponentially in the last 5 to 10 years. We've seen an influx of residents from other areas of the country, specifically the East Coast. I think they come here for our Midwest warmth, or at least that's what I'd like to call it, right? They enroll their kids in our schools. They really commit to building their families here and building a life here, working in our schools. They work in our community organizations. They open up businesses. They work here in the larger Chicago community, even beyond our Jewish community. In the last 5 years alone, we've added about 300 families just to the Orthodox Jewish community, which is about 30,000 strong right now. And in all different parts of our area in Cook County in this district. So like I said, we've had just a tremendous amount of growth. We've opened a few new schools. Actually, my husband and I opened one of the few schools this past year. We have 20 total Orthodox day schools. A number of new synagogues have been built. Retail stores have opened. We're just really an epicenter for Midwest Jews, Midwest Orthodox Jews, I guess you could say. And I would say like our 3 biggest issues with which the county can, and I know certainly is already working to help us on. Number 1, public safety, obviously. We're seeing, anti-Semitism all over the world. Specifically here, we just saw there was an incident in Skokie over the weekend. And, that's one big issue for us. Education is another big issue for us, although public schools aren't so much an option for most of us. The district does provide us with specific support, and equitable services. Some of them are linked specifically to our public schools, like, speech and, other kind of programs that they lend to our schools as well. And we've been really grateful for all the supportive, the support we've gotten from the county. Another issue for us is property values in our community, because we all kind of need to live and live near each other, because we walk to our synagogues or to our restaurants or, any number of services, any number of our synagogues and other services that we have in our community. Our property values are really inflated because everyone kind of needs to live in the same, area. So assessments really are based on sales, as we all know, and not really reflecting the actual value of our home. So those are our three issues: public safety, education, and property values, I would say. Right now, our geographic kind of boundaries of our community are really Peterson on the south, Gulf to the north. The western border of Skokie is really Skokie Boulevard. And the east border of Skokie is like McCormick, and the east border in the city would be Western. So it's kind of like an elongated L shape, I guess you would say, a little Tetris. Most of our areas contain within the 16th House District, the 8th Senate District. A little bit less is in the 9th Senate District, the 17th House District, and then a small portion is in the 15th House District. What else? Let's see. Does anybody have any questions for me as well? We've also, I also want to talk actually quickly about, like I said, we have a number of great community organizations, like Rabbi Soroka is a big part, his organization, the Aguda, is a big part of doing a lot of grassroots for our community, including a few things that have really been really amazing, especially during the pandemic. Number one is our Kiwi Kids, which is the pandemic food box program that we were able to take advantage of. I know a number of communities did as well. But ours specifically in our community, we're providing kosher food for about 250,000 kosher meals every month to families for their kids that are 18 and under. We also, and Rabbi Soroka was a big piece of this as well, we have a volunteer operated vaccine clinic. Actually, the mayor came to it once or twice. We've given almost 10,000 vaccines in the last couple of weeks. So we've really been a big piece of vaccinating a lot of the community as well. And just in general, in our experience, in the Orthodox Jewish community, being a significant constituency in a district is really vital to having that representation for us in the legislature that, will hopefully be able to champion our issues. So we really, hope to stay together.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Smith. Any questions?
No pressure.
Thank you for a very thorough testimony. I think, I think the example of, what we just saw with the protesters in Skokie is a great example of why it's important to have communities of interest kept together that can be advocate to their representatives as a whole community. So
yeah,
we know it's been a difficult week, so sending love to all of you.
Yeah, I was just going to say it was interesting. We had a holiday also this weekend, started on Sunday night, right after this happened in Skokie. So I just even saw within our own community, just a quick mobilization, emails went out, people who were running our synagogues and getting ready for our holiday were able to just mobilize. We got an email from the, police department. There was a lot, just like being able to mobilize. And that's a big piece of us staying here and staying safe and keeping our families safe.
Yeah.
Thank
Josina,
you.
if I could just make the
Please,
comment that the Skokie, Lincolnwood, and most of the 50th Ward part of the community that was described is in the 13th County Board District. But I only go up to Devon Avenue. And as Mindy pointed out, the community goes up to Peterson, which is in the next district over with Commissioner Gaynor. So there is a portion of the community that is separated into 2 county board districts, and that's something I think we should be looking at. So Mindy, thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you for pointing it out in that way too. Yeah, that's definitely, and that's actually a significant portion of our community as well, that Peterson Park area. That's where the high school is that I teach in. And certainly we would love, that group to be a part of ours as well. So thank you for mentioning that, Commissioner.
Absolutely, and that distinct need, on Saturdays, walking, being within walking distance is very unique as well, and very important to make sure that you all can maintain that. So thank you very much. Any other questions for Ms. Zisman? All right, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Next, we have our new Evanston City Clerk, Stephanie Mendoza.
Hi, thank you so much for having me and for the members of this committee for this very important work. My name is Stephanie Mendoza. I'm the newly elected city clerk here. And for the past year, I've also been working for an organization called Evanston Latinos, doing community outreach for them within the Latino community in Evanston and part of Skevinston and Skokie as well. We've managed to grow the clients for this organization from only being able to identify about 150 individuals that live in Evanston to about 700 individual families that live here in Evanston, Latino families that live in Evanston, and some portions of Skokie and the Skevinston area, the 60203 zip code. I'm kind of here on an individual capacity, but also trying to, shift my hats between my advocacy work within our Latino community here in Evanston. So according to the data in Evanston, about 11% of the population is Latino. We're still waiting for that, obviously, that census information to come back, but 22% of our Skokie districts, Skevinston districts, Skokie, Evanston District 65 schools make up about 22% of our kids, Latinos. According to the last meeting I had with Dr. Horton, but their website says that it's close to 20.4% right now. And the ETHS population also is increasing, which is our high school. And so I mostly work in Evanston, which I consider being in the north side of the district, and so Evanston is quite unique, or the Latino population in Evanston is quite unique, and which is important why we keep all of Evanston in the district is because there's really no one place where the Latino community is located. It's very spread out between the 5th, 2nd, and 8th ward, which is just about spreads across the entire city of Evanston. Even as you look at the population of where kids, if my best indicator of following where families live is following the percentage where of the schools that our kids live. For example, at Oakton School, which is on the far south, on the south side of Evanston, it's about 29% Latino, and going towards Bessie Rhodes, which is Skevinston, it's 31% of the population of the students is Latino, which filters in a lot of our Skokie and our Evanston children that attend school, and that school is actually looking to becoming a big dual language school that will be K through 8 complete, that will be fully in Spanish English education in the next few years. So I think that really tells us a lot of why it's important for Evanston, for the entire city of Evanston, to stay in the district. Some of the needs that I've seen through my work in the community that are needed from the county is I'd really like to, first of all, the entire all of us to stay together, but a lot of the landlords need more workshops in Spanish when it comes to tax appeals and also learning exemptions. I do know that we do have a Spanish speaker in our commissioner's office, but I'd like to see more of these, workshops in Spanish and directly targeting our Latino community in Evanston. Along with finding assistance for landlords. A lot of our Latino landlords who predominantly have houses in the 5th and the 2nd ward have a lot of affordable housing, but also don't have, the experience of larger management companies that know how to keep, ledgers and know how to keep track of the renters. So when it comes time, I know the county released assistance for landlords to apply for rental assistance for people that they've been renting to. So I know a lot of these Latino families are behind a few months, but these landlords unfortunately do not have the skills that other big companies like Kagan Management have to be able to tell the county or tell the housing IDA how they're keeping track of rent. So those small landlords are unfortunately not able to get assistance for their tenants. So I'd like to see more workshops for landlords to ensure that these very important and affordable housing units are kept, and they're able to maintain these units for a lot of our Black and Brown families here in Evanston. So those are some of the needs, and if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mendoza. Any questions from the task force members?
I have a question for Ms. Mendoza. You mentioned that the Latino community is kind of spread out throughout Evanston. It's not like, one specific area. Is it kind of like equally dispersed throughout Evanston, or is it more like certain pockets? And those pockets are, there's 2, 3, 4, 5 different pockets that are spread around.
Yeah, it's mostly pockets. It's not necessarily in one area. I do know, for example, in the 5th Ward, there are about 3 streets that are predominantly, most of those houses have been bought by Latino families. But for example, in the 3rd Ward, which they have a small pocket in 3 different buildings that are managed by one company, which is and I find myself there a lot. That is a very small pocket, and there's bigger pockets like in the 8th and the 2nd Ward. But it's not really like geographically in one location where it would make sense to, cut it off or anything like that.
Any more questions? All right, thank you, Ms. Mendoza, and congrats on your recent swearing in, as well as the first Latina citywide in Evanston. Next, we have Kemery Kuhn.
Hi, thank you for hearing me today. My name is Kemery Kuhn. I am a resident in Skokie and recently elected as trustee as well, but I'm here in my personal capacity to share about my experiences as an Asian American. I'm here to testify on behalf of the Asian American community as a community of interest. I am the child of Cambodian refugees. I am bilingual and speak in both my native Khmer language and English. Politically and statistically, I am grouped into a monolithic demographic that's identified as Asian American, even though we come from very distinct cultures, countries of origin, language, political history here in the United States. We are a very diverse demographic within this community of interest. Our community is very fragmented to begin with, and to further divide our communities would be a disservice to the community. In recently being elected, I became the first Asian American woman elected to the Skokie board. Within the last 10 years, we've went from 0 to 5 in terms of having statewide elected offices who are Asian American. Asians are the fastest growing racial demographic in the state, increasing by 24% since 2010 and now making up 5.7% of the Illinois population. As Commissioner Josina Maria mentioned, the 13th district is the highest Asian community district in the county. In Skokie, Asians make up over 20% of our demographics. Our neighbor, Lincolnwood, has 28% Asian American, and Morton Grove has 30.5% Asian American. What I'd like to see is expansion of the county border to also include the area south of Devon, which has a large South Asian population. There are It's a very diverse community by itself, which has a lot of South Asian businesses, but then we also want to make sure that the residents of that community are also included in that demographic as well. In terms of issues I'm interested in, looking at public safety, we know that Asian Americans crimes against Asian Americans have been happening for hundreds of years. It's only recently that has been highlighted in media. We see the rise in hate crimes as people are speaking up and getting more visibility. It's a challenge to work with a demographic that is it's loosely affiliated when it comes to language and cultural barriers. So the opportunity to be able to have somebody work closely with the Asian American community to address these issues is really important for us. When we look at public health, we see with the COVID pandemic that with the Cook County running the healthcare system, we want to make sure that there are appropriate resources that will support linguistically smaller communities such as the Asian American community, and making sure that they have the cultural as well as the language support resources that are needed. And even looking at trauma-informed care, I've had family members that did survive severe COVID, and as refugees and the impact of being isolated within the hospital, and making sure that providers are able to understand and provide care for them as well is really important. Education, similar to what was mentioned earlier, looking at culturally appropriate programs and language access to support Asian Americans within that particular demographic so that they have access to more equitable resources within the school system. Again, our community is already divided. We're already working against the grain in terms of being able to be recognized within the community, and to further divide our communities would be a disservice to us. And so I would like to see that you take into consideration the Asian American community as a community of interest.
Thank you, Ms. Kuhn. Any questions from the task force? All right, thank you for a very comprehensive.
Shlomo, not so much as a question. I just, to me, I find this fascinating. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly, because it's the definition of Asian American, as you mentioned, Ms. Kuhn, is very, very broad. There's a lot of different sub-communities within that terminology. And it sounds like what you're saying is that despite the fact that there may be these sub-communities within this broad categorization of Asian Americans, you don't want those sub-communities to be split from each other and identified as individual communities of interest, but rather keep them all together as much as possible despite their differences.
Exactly, because then we would be further diminished. And so our way of being able to come together and as a community is part of this monolithic umbrella. Otherwise, we would be further isolated. If you think about the population, for instance, I'm a very small demographic if you only count Cambodian Americans in the state of Illinois, right, or even within the county, but I identify as part of the broader Asian American community. So, and we identify in terms of some of the challenges that we face as an Asian American community. So when you talk about hate crimes, you're talking about access to linguistically appropriate materials for healthcare access, within the schools, and other county programs. Those are things that if you had dedicated resources committed to that, you can really expand and develop the program to look at the specific challenges to our particular community as a demographic.
Thank you. That was fascinating. I appreciate that.
Could I just ask, you suggested that we should take the district south of Devon, which is similar to what Ms. Zisman had suggested, going south of Devon. But would you think you'd want to go to Peterson Park, or are you talking going farther east on Devon and going west to a different part of the city?
Particular South Asian population is thanks. I know that in that particular area, when you have the border right there on Devon, you're separating the residents who live in that area close to those businesses as well as the business themselves. So I would, when you're making that consideration, thinking about the Asian American demographic within that particular area, and making sure that they're included with the businesses as well.
Thank you.
Oh, you're muted.
You know, after a whole year of the pandemic, I still do that. Thank you, Ms. Kuhn, for your testimony. Next, we have Mary Oshana.
Thank you, Larry Suffredin, and for all of you on this task force, and Josina Marita for inviting me here for the opportunity to provide my testimony today. My name is Mary Oshana. I'm a Skokie Park District Commissioner and the co-founder of the Assyrian Community Fund.
Oh, I think we lost her. All right, we will wait for her to reconnect and we'll go to the next speaker. Reverend Neighbors, are you there? Reverend Neighbors, are you there? All right, if not, Mr. Clarence Weaver, are you there?
I believe Larry Murphy is going to speak in Clarence Weaver's place.
Okay, great. Mr. Murphy, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi,
oh,
I'm so sorry.
Mary, is that you?
Hello?
Mary, is that
Hello?
you?
Yes, I'm sorry. My computer literally just shut down, so I will proceed if it's okay where I left off.
No, please go ahead and then we'll go to.
Thank you so much. As I mentioned, I'm the Skokie Park District Commissioner and the co-founder of the Assyrian Community Fund, an organization based in Skokie, established to provide critical information and resources to Assyrian families in the wake of the pandemic. It's an honor to be invited here today to testify on behalf of the Assyrian community during the 2020 census redistricting process. Assyrians are an indigenous people to natives present-day Iraq, Turkey, Syria, and Iran. About 90% of Assyrians have been forced out of their ancestral lands over the past century due to genocide, religious and ethnic persecution, land theft, forced assimilation, and more. Against all odds, Assyrians have defied oppression in the homeland to build strong and resourceful communities in diaspora, including Chicago, which is one of the largest Assyrian diasporas in the world. Assyrians are concentrated in the West Ridge and Rogers Park neighborhoods of the north side of Chicago, as well as the northwest suburbs, including Skokie, Morton Grove, Lincolnwood, and Niles. The Assyrian community is bordered by Lake Street to the north, Clark Street to the east, Caldwell Avenue to the west, and Foster Avenue to the south. Over 50,000 Assyrians live in the 13th district, including at least 20,000 in Skokie alone. Of course, we are waiting on the census results as well to analyze. Much of Assyrian diaspora life in Chicago is rooted in our churches, such as Margi Wargis in Rogers Park and Mara Bishu on North Pulaski Road. Important community organizations include the Assyrian National Council of Illinois, located on Peterson Avenue, as well as the location on Church Street, the Assyrian American Association, and the Assyrian Cultural Foundation in Lincolnwood. These religious and community institutions serve as a place to gather, provide essential social services, and celebrate religious and cultural holidays, such as the annual Assyrian New Year's Parade on Western Avenue. Church and community organizations also keep the ancestral language alive by hosting language classes and funding Assyrian language schools. Because Assyrians share commonalities in language, history, and religion, we should be considered a community of interest in the redistricting process. There are several ways Cook County can support the unique needs of the Assyrian community. The failure of the federal, state, and local governments to provide adequate language translation prevents many immigrants and first-generation Assyrians from accessing essential government services and programs, such as legal services, voting, unemployment benefits, Medicare, and Medicaid. Expanding food assistance programs would also reduce the number of food insecure Assyrians in the county. According to Niles Township Food Pantry, they've quoted that over 25% of recipients are Assyrian. Many Assyrian Americans also strongly support local, state, and national resolutions recognizing the Assyrian genocide. After being denied the right to fully participate in politics and democracy in their ancestral homelands, Assyrian Americans are extremely proud to vote, run for office, advocate on behalf of the important community issues, and organize politically. Placing Assyrians within a single Cook County district in 2010 served our community well by unifying our voices and solidifying our ability to select public officials who will respond to our unique needs. I ask that the Commission recognize Assyrian Americans as a community of interest due to our shared ethnic, linguistic, religious, and cultural practices, and continue to place Assyrians within a single Cook County district. Thank you so much for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks so much, Mrs. Oshana. Any questions from the task force?
I missed the number of how many Assyrians. I think you said 20,000 in Skokie alone, but I missed the other numbers. Do you mind just repeating that?
Yeah, of course. And I apologize again for the technical issues here. 20,000 in Skokie and over 50,000 living in the 13th district that comprises over Morton Grove, Lincolnwood, Niles, and Skokie.
If there's anyone who could appreciate a community that has been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years, with a distinct culture that has been persecuted, Jewish people could certainly appreciate that. And it's beautiful to see how the community has survived throughout, they've survived the test of time, and they can only do that by being together and being there for each other. So you're doing a great job, and keep it up.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Any additional questions for Ms. Oshana? All right, thanks so much, Ms. Oshana, and congratulations on your recent swearing in last night.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Reverend Neighbors. Is he here or no?
He's on his way, but I don't think he's on yet.
Okay, then we'll have Mr. Larry Murphy go first. Mr. Larry Murphy, thanks for joining us. I believe you're muted.
It's Dr. Murphy.
Oh, Doctor, I apologize. Thank you so much. That's a
Larry,
very well-earned title.
All right. All right. Thank you so much to you and to Commissioner Sufferton for this opportunity to have a brief word. I'll be a little interrupted here. I'm working my store this evening, but we'll do as best we can for the 3 minutes allotted. So I'm representing this evening the Black Business Consortium of Evanston and the North Shore, a consortium of African-American businesses that goes back about 6 years now. Myself and Mr. Weaver, his wife, and my wife, Jean, and Wendy are the organizers and founders of the organization. We are, I think I keep getting muted. All right. So this is a community of shared interest because we're all Black or African American small business owners with local locations right here in Evanston. The African American community in Evanston goes back well into the 19th century, actually. Around the time of the Civil War, we began moving into this community. I've been a community of cohesiveness since that time. With a very storied history, which Mr. Dino Robinson is chronicling in his museum here in Evanston. We are concerned that as redistricting takes place, that the cohesive community of African Americans here in Evanston are not separated out, but that we can remain as a single group of shared interests, shared concerns, and I guess the specifics that we would ask of the county are not so much as have been articulated by others, but merely that the county remain mindful of our presence, sensitive to the needs of African Americans in this town, sensitive to the concerns that we have, so that redistricting does not either break up the cohesion that we have or that it will empower forces not friendly to those needs and concerns. That you'd be mindful in reviewing current policies and in your new policy making to consider the actual and potential impacts of enactments to the participants in this group, particularly because we are small business owners and we know that issues of taxing and economic development, economic support are critical to our survival, particularly as we try to sustain ourselves in these pandemic and hopefully soon post-pandemic days. And so issues of affordability of housing, we've been here for well over 100 years, and yet, as we know, housing prices continue to escalate, and the ability of persons to sustain themselves in this community is very challenging. And so whatever can be done by way of taxation policy or other ways that we can assist in establishing and maintaining affordability of housing would be of critical importance to this community, as well as any ways in which the county can contribute toward economic development and the support and sustaining of the African-American business community here. It's been a very vibrant community. We have over 180 African-American businesses here in Evanston, both storefront, brick and mortar, as well as online. I'm very pleased to say that State Representative Robin Gable was one of the first participants in our tour of Black businesses here in town that we launched some 5 years ago. We have businesses in all 9 of Evanston's wards, downtown, out from town, ranging anywhere from manufacturing to educational systems, restaurants, other kind of small business entities. So whatever can be done that can be a support to us in that way would be deeply, deeply appreciated. Commissioner Sufferton has been a friend of ours for a long, long time. And I'm sorry to hear that he won't be around forever. In fact, has announced that he will be seeking other pastures. But in the meantime, we trust and rely on him and others of his mind to be of support to us. So we thank you so much for this opportunity to have a word. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Murphy. Any questions for Dr. Murphy? Well, I want to just thank you. Oh, please.
Sorry, my raise hand did not work.
I apologize. I can't see everybody on the screen, so please do speak up.
I just wanted to say I'm a 26-year resident of the 50th Ward. My late husband and son are both Black, and because there's basically no Black small businesses in the 50th Ward, we do use the Evanston Black business community extensively. So we have attended Reverend Neighbor's Church. We use the Black barber shops, which are so important to my son growing up, Black restaurants. So I just wanted to kind of add that the Black business community in Evanston is also very important to the Black community in the 50th Ward.
Thank you so much for that affirmation.
I would echo that as a resident of Skokie with an African-American husband and mixed race children, that we also are very grateful for the strong history and community, particularly the small business community, but the vibrant community and civil rights history in Evanston as well. And thank you, Dr.
Josina.
Please, sure.
Yeah, I just want to thank Dr. Larry Murphy. Besides his small business, which is one of the great yogurt shops in Evanston, he is one of the most distinguished theologians and professors at Northwestern, and a great leader in civil rights movements through the years. And I still remember him giving a speech on the need to extend the Voting Rights Act. And I just am so grateful that he and his wife are so active in this community. So thank you, Dr. Murphy.
Well, thank you for that word of affirmation. We've appreciated your service over the years, and I appreciate that very much. We member of the Evanston Democratic Party board, and proud to be there, and still hoping to continue to support and contribute to the work that we do and the values that we share in any way that I can.
Well, thank you, Dr. Murphy, for everything that you've done and everything you continue to do. And thank you for taking time in the middle of your business hours to join us this evening. Thank you. We know how hard small business owners work, so thank you.
Surely.
All right, next we have Reverend Neighbors. I see you've joined us. Please. You're muted.
Now it says mute. Can you hear me now? You can. Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay. I'll pay no attention to what those icons are. Good evening, everybody. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak for a few minutes tonight. Grateful for Commissioner Suffredin and the years of dedicated service that he has committed to our area and to our region. I've only been here 6 years, but he was one of the first persons who actually met me, made me feel at home. He actually had a resolution that was drawn up and signed by members of the commission, and I was grateful for that. It is on my wall in my office, so I'm grateful for our relationship. And like Dr. Murphy's sorry to see that he is leaving, but we know that he's going to go on and do other wonderful, amazing things. I want to echo the sentiments of Dr. Murphy as well, and to share with you what I believe are, the important facets of the African American community in Evanston. I've resided here for 6 years. I serve in a few different capacities, but the main one is serving as pastor of Second Baptist Church, which is 139 years old and is one of the older Black organizations in the community. The second oldest, actually, just behind Ebenezer AME Church. They are older than us by 14 days, so they've never let us forget it. So kind of like having an older sibling. I also serve as president of the Evanston North Shore NAACP. Our offices are located in the 5th Ward at the Foster Street School. And again, the church is located in the 1st Ward downtown. And anything that is done in terms of what this proposal is, I think must keep in mind the countless and valuable contributions that have been made by the Black and Brown community in Evanston. Our existence is predicated upon the fact that we have been major contributors to the community over the years. And that contribution is not just in Evanston, however. As Dr. Murphy may have noted, we have folks that come into the Black community in Evanston from all around the region. If you come into the area that is known as the center of the Black community, which is Church and Dodge, you will find Black and Brown people getting their hair cut and getting their hair done at barbershops and beauty salons from as far away as Highland Park, certainly Winnetka, Kensington, and other places, Kenilworth, and other places along those lines. So we are a magnet for the Black community in the North Shore area, as well as significant portions of the north side of Chicago, certainly Rogers Park as well. We are an active community, but we are concerned about anything that stands in the way of our not only being able to maintain our presence in the community, but to grow it as well. In the last 6 years that I've been here, I think that Evanston has lost just about 4,000 African-American residents. That's moving in the wrong direction. A part of that obviously is due to housing, but there are other variables that are involved in that as well. We have to find ways that will help Evanston remain an attractive and wonderful place for Black families to live, and for parents to raise their children. And I use that word specifically when I say Black. I'm talking about African American. I'm talking about Jamaican. I'm talking about Belize. I'm talking about a West Indian. And when I say Black and Brown, I'm certainly talking about our Asian and Latinx brothers and sisters as well. If we're going to maintain diversity, if we're going to maintain the idea that we may potentially one day become a beloved community, then we have to make sure that our county, as well as our state, is doing everything they can to make those opportunities available for our people. So I stand on behalf of the NAACP, which has about 500 members, most of whom are in Evanston, but several others, again, are in other North Shore communities. And on behalf of Second Baptist Church, which has about 900 members. Now, let me tell you, I don't speak for every one of them. You know, I'm proud of the fact that they are individual, they have individual minds and all of that, but they did elect me as their leader, so they do give me a little leeway as being a spokesperson. And if I do get out of the way, they will certainly let me know about it. But I want to say that I'm grateful to be on this call. Grateful for the work that the commission has done on behalf of minorities in the Evanston community. And again, once more, I'm grateful to Commissioner Suffredin for his work and knowing Kevin Brown as well. I've known Kevin for the 6 years that I've been here, and I thank God for his selfless devotion and his dedication to all things social justice in our community as well. So thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity. I think my 3 minutes is out. I am a Baptist preacher, however.
I was just going to say, we don't expect you to stick to your 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for Reverend Neighbors?
Reverend, I have a question for you. You know, we've seen this troubling trend of the loss of the African American, a diminishing of the African American community in Evanston. You said, I think 4,000 African Americans in the most recent counting have moved from Evanston. You said one of the reasons was housing. What are some of the other reasons, and what are some ways perhaps that county government or any level of government for that matter could help stem the tide and reverse that trend?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I appreciate it. Again, from my perspective, I would say that at the top of the list is housing, and it certainly has to do with finances. Evanston is rapidly becoming an enclave for the wealthy, simply because of its position and its location. But there are other variables as well, and Evanston has some challenging areas, even though it's a beautiful community. There are challenges with regard to our educational systems, District 65, especially. We do have a new superintendent who is just finishing his first year, but the academic disparity between white children and Black and brown children has to be another significant concern for parents and families of Black and brown children in Evanston, particularly Black and Latinx. So that's another concern. I would say another concern probably has to do with potential employment opportunities. So Evanston is a small community, and the major employer is certainly Northwestern University. The second one would probably be I don't know, the health system. I think that might be second. But after you take those away, the question becomes, where will people of color be able to find the jobs that will help them to buy the homes that they want to live in for their children? And I've raised this issue since I've been here, sir. And I started my ministry many years ago in Princeton, New Jersey, another university town, a much smaller enclave. And when I began in 1986 as a pastor, there were probably about 2,500 Black people that lived in Princeton, a town of about 25,000. There were literally dozens and dozens of homes. My in-laws still live there, and I have to tell you that right now there are less than 10 Black families in what was once the predominantly Black neighborhood called the John Witherspoon neighborhood in Princeton, New Jersey. I see those trends beginning to happen in Evanston. And I think that we have enough resources and people like Kevin Brown to make sure that it doesn't happen in the way that it did in Princeton.
And I'll add that we've seen this trend across the city of Chicago and Cook County, not just over the last 10 years, but the 10 years prior as well. We lost about 200,000 African Americans in Illinois between 2000 and 2010. And we expect to see a loss of about 100,000 to 200,000 in this upcoming census between 2010 and 2020. So it's a difficult, troubling trend, and we have to be very intentional about ensuring that these communities can stay affordable and accessible and have the opportunities to ensure communities can stay. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks.
Josina, if I could, Reverend Neighbors, one of the issues that I've seen in the 20 years I've represented the community is that from Rogers Park, we have people who are renters, many of them coming from Africa, many of them African Americans who save up and then are able to get a house or something in Evanston and then get priced out of Evanston and end up in Skokie. So the 4,000 that you talk about, I would suggest that a good number of them are in the 49th, the 50th, and the Skokie area. So they haven't left us; they're still here. And so one of the things I'd want to hope for in a new district is that we keep together the African American community that's here. And Ms. Mendoza, in talking about the Latinx communities, kind of talking about the same thing, because there's the same kind of movement from the 49th Ward into Evanston, and then some of them being priced out and having to go to Skokie or even Lincolnwood. Now, Lincolnwood is a much smaller town, but it has some interesting housing. And then Morton Grove, another part of this district, has some reasonable housing. But as Lucy, who was on the phone a little while ago, said, even if you live in the 50th Ward, you come back, if you're African American, to the Evanston community because of the stores in that. So I appreciate your comments, and I think it's one of the things we've got to take into account. The other thing is that, you know, we had two of the communities talk about public safety and the issues that have come up. The African American community also has public safety issues. And one of the things that I want to work with the rabbi on is figuring out how the role of the sheriff can be more dynamic in assisting the local police departments with Chicago and Evanston and Skokie in making sure that we are protecting the public safety of the diverse groups that make up this district. So thank you very much for your comments.
Yes, thank you.
And to that point, Larry, I just went back to review the numbers. Reverend Neighbors, you missed the earlier presentation I did about the demographics of the district. I think that's about right, that in this region, there has been a shift more than necessarily a loss in terms of the 13th district as a whole. The 2010 figure, the 13th district was about 11% African American, and the 2019 figure is 12%. So we actually see a slight increase overall. But like you said, there's a loss in Evanston and shifts in other places. And, you know, while we see ourselves as a community as the 13th district, we also want to make sure that people can continue to stay to live exactly where they want to live.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
In the 13th district. And thank you for your work reaching out to the Asian American community in this, you know, last year. And like you said, continuing to try to make the 13th district and all of our communities really a beloved community. It's a goal.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I was proud and honored to be a part of that. Yeah, thank you.
I believe that is our last testifier. If anybody from the public or anybody else from the task force would like to make any additional comments, please go ahead. All right, well, this is the second. Please, Mr. Brown.
I did want to just thank Dr. Murphy and Pastor Neighbors again. Pastor, the check is in the mail, so thank you.
No, we appreciate you, Kevin. Okay, all right.
And I appreciate all of the task force members really reaching out. You know, Larry chose us because we come from different segments of, you know, the district, and making sure that all of the different, you know, racial, ethnic, religious, other communities were represented in the public hearing process was really important to make sure that we are collecting the real, you know, lived experiences and stories and perspectives of the district. So thank you to the task force members for doing that outreach. Thank you for your work. Thank you to everybody who has testified over the last 2 evenings. I know I've learned a lot about the 13th district and many of the smaller communities that I was less familiar with. So it's been an educational process for me. Like we said before, we will be taking all of the community input from the last 2 nights, as well as any testimony that people want to submit in writing, you know, later to this task force, compile it, and be providing that in the Cook County Board's official process. Again, those hearing dates are June 7th, 14th, and 21st. The first two at 10 a.m., the last one at 6 p.m., which will be in the evening. So again, I want to thank everybody for their work. I want to thank Commissioner Suffredin for asking me to chair this task force. I will also announce that I will be stepping down from this task force after this evening, but really appreciate all of the work that everybody has put in, the experience of learning and hearing from everybody and continuing to work with everybody to continue to make sure the 13th district is a great place. So thank you again, everybody, and I'll hand it over to Larry to close.
Thank you, Josina. And I want to thank you for your efforts in working on the task force. We'll miss you, but I've asked Marilyn Pagan Banks to take over as the chair of the task force, and she has agreed to do that. So thank you, Reverend Marilyn Pagan Banks. We will, as I just said, or as Josina just said, we will be sitting down and we will be working to put together a report so that we can have impact on the overall county budget, county map, which will impact the county budget when we're finished in significant ways. So I thank all of you for doing this. We've recorded this. As I said, we will put all of this up online. I can't thank everybody more than I have, because what you're doing is helping us define and understand our community a little better, and making sure that when we do the map, that the map represents the community and that voices can be heard. You know, it was interesting. Josina refers to communities of interest in her presentation. I refer to them as communities of influence. Both words are interchangeable to a degree, but to me, the most important thing here is we're talking about communities that will influence whoever the next county commissioner is, to make sure that they are making sure the services that are necessary and the resources that are necessary are there for the community. So thank you all for being with us tonight. And I will appoint a replacement for Josina tomorrow or the day after, and I'll let everyone know who that is. Thank you. Josina, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
You too. See you.
So may all be safe and be well. Bye-bye.